I think that most people have like a lineage as far as what they listen to in music. You know, like something sparked their interest in music at a young age, and then eventually there's a point where someone like, you know, gets into a type of music that brings them to where they're at today.
Notes from the front line of a strange new culture. This is Strange Notes. Hi, I'm George. This is Tim, Joe, and Zach.
Zach.
And we're the Funky Bunch.
And we're the Funky Bunch, also known as Rise Against. We're in Toronto, Ontario for their 2-night stint. Rise Against has mainly been based out of Chicago, right? Like, so, like, tell us a bit about like growing up in like in Chicago, like the scene and things of that nature.
It was a good time to grow up because you kind of had like a little bit of everything. You had the pop punk geniuses like Screeching Weasel, and then you had the core Chicago punk rock with Pegboy and Naked Raygun, and then you had the amazing hardcore band Los Crudos, you know, and I mean, it was really a pretty eclectic scene.
Yeah, all kinds of options.
Yeah.
All kinds of bands to go see, and bands that were really like saying important things. You know, going to a Crudos show on a Friday, but then going to a Slapstick show on a Saturday. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
totally just different atmospheres, but super. You know, you could see like this like important things happening.
Was the punk scene like ushering you into that sort of political like thought process almost?
Crudos were one of like, you know, one of the first bands I said that was just that heavily, you know, involved in political songs and explanations of songs. You know, Crudos songs were 90 seconds long, but Martine's explanation was 5 minutes long. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he would do like an English translation, and then he would do it in Spanish. I mean, he would talk all night. You know, the song was like, you know, the other guys in Crudos were just sitting there just like,
Yeah, totally.
it's like, let's go, come on, you know. But Martine would really, he would explain each song. I mean, the explanations were, you know, like I said, longer than the songs. But it really, you walked away from it learning a lot about the Pilsen neighborhood in Chicago. We learned a lot about, you know, I grew up in a middle class suburb of Chicago, and like there are neighborhoods of Chicago. When I was 17, I had no idea what was going on there. You know what I mean? Absolutely no idea. Clueless, you know. And so Martine was like you know, my first introduction to, you know, how an entirely different half of the city was living.
There are parts of Chicago that you just don't drive through, right? Like there's like
Yeah, I mean, when I first started going to shows, I mean, Wicker Park, which is total hipster neighborhood, was kind of a scary neighborhood.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Yeah, it was like the heart of where Underdog Records loft was, and you know, you go there to see what they were about. Underdog Records was a label from Chicago.
And Chicago's still divided north and south. You know, very much divided, and it's mainly like a racial line. It's like a social construct. It's a social border. We're still one of the most segregated cities in America. There's like a ratio, I don't know what the numbers are, but we used to be really segregated, and it's still one of the most segregated cities in the north.
What would you attribute to that?
The first Mayor Daley, you know, just kind of a racist, kind of a bigot, and kind of had a lot of different policies that kept minorities in minority neighborhoods, you know, built these infamous projects like the Robert Taylor homes and the Cabrini Green.
Yeah.
Just, just really bad ideas, and and then spent time building up, the north Chicago. Mayor Day was probably just one of the elements that really contributed to how seedy it was. But if you really trace back Chicago history, the South was always seedy. That's where our brothels were. That's where when Prohibition was happening. That's where it's all the speakeasies were. Illegal gambling. It was all on the South Side. So it's been really, it can be traced back even further than that.
The seeds of punk definitely grow in like corruption and like things of that nature. So if anything, Chicago has always seemed like this perfect kind of environment for a lot of these great bands to come out of.
Sidekick Kato.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, Bullyable, certainly Idiot Fingers Louie. Joe's band was an important part of Chicago and Chicago punk. Who else?
They started the Chicago Fire.
Yeah.
There you go.
Haymarket Riot.
Joe's cow kicked over.
Chicago history, right?
There's a band called, it was Gage and Trigwater. They were very Fugazi influenced.
Matt Skiba from Alkaline Trio, his first band Jerkwater.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was the first band, but like the Broadways, Lawrence Arms certainly nowadays.
Sure. But is it still like the same kind of vibe? Venues kind of come and go?
Granted, we're probably not the most qualified people to speak about the Chicago scene, considering we spend 9 months of our year here in the bus. So it's like we get to a handful of shows a year in Chicago, and the scenes that are really taking over there are things that are really underground. Many people are unaware. And that will be the next big thing that happens. But that said, there are still good venues in Chicago. Chicago's been sort of more known nowadays for the number of like big kind of poppy bands that are coming out of it, and less of bands like us, the Alkaline Trio.
I'm George Pettit, and this is Strange Notes.
Being so like deeply ingrained in like the whole like punk scene, and then like coming into success, obviously there would be like a lot of tumultuous times and like and the kind of letting go of certain fans.
My first introduction to that whole dilemma was playing in hardcore bands in Chicago, and then Joe and I started Rise Against, and shortly after we caught Fat Mike's attention, and Fat Mike had signed us. The second we were on Fat Records, we were sellouts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The second, there was no record. We weren't playing shows yet. You know what I mean? We were opening up for Buried Alive with the Fireside Bowl. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And we were sellouts. We were rock stars. You know what I mean? Like Joe's working at like an online, video thing. I'm working at a ticket broker, and we're freaking rock stars.
Yeah, exactly.
We go on tour playing for 10 kids, and it was just like, a lot of people, in the hardcore scene kind of turned their back on us. In a lot of ways, those friendships that you have conditions.
Sure,
And the hardcore scene gets a lot of things right, you know what I mean? And there's some things that it gets wrong, you know what I mean? And certainly elitism that went along with it, and a lot of those people eventually came around, you know what I mean? They grew out of that, and they come out to our shows now. But at the time, man, it was,
it was intense,
Yeah.
It was really disheartening for me because Ben Weasel just did a solo show in Chicago, but he only did the My Brain Hurts record.
Yeah, I heard.
And it was, it was like him and Dan Vapid.
Yeah.
And I got more times than not, hey, how you doing? I got, hey, what the fuck are you doing here?
Yeah.
Like from all my old friends,
Sure,
I was like, whoa, like really?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just gone. It's not that like we abandoned this scene. We're just like Tim said, we're gone a lot. Like I was like was really bummed out about it, you know?
You personally haven't changed, but like people's opinions definitely do change over
Yeah.
time. A lot of that like led me to believe in like the absolute futility of punk at times, it being unbelievably self-defeating. You know, you build something up until it gets to a point and then on to the next thing.